Imagine risking your job to save someone's life, only to be punished for it. That's exactly what happened to this bus driver. Today, I'm sharing the incredible story of a bus driver who made a split-second decision that changed everything. When he saw a collapsed veteran on his route, he didn't think twice about stopping to help, but his company's response shocked everyone. What happens next reveals something powerful about duty, humanity, and what really matters when someone's life is on the line. It was just another ordinary Tuesday morning in downtown Minneapolis. The streets were busy with the usual hustle and bustle of people heading to work, school buses dropping off kids, and city transit making its scheduled stops. For 47-year-old Marcus Johnson, a Metro Transit bus driver for the past 14 years, it was Route 22, the same route he'd been driving for the last 3 years. Marcus knew every stop, every traffic light, and even recognized many of the regular passengers who relied on his punctuality to get to work on time. He took pride in his perfect attendance record and his reputation for keeping to schedule. His supervisors had commended him multiple times for his reliability. "I've always believed that being on time matters," Marcus would later tell reporters. "People depend on me to get to their jobs, their doctor's appointments, to pick up their kids. I take that responsibility seriously." But this Tuesday would be different. As Marcus approached the stop on Washington Avenue, something caught his eye. On the sidewalk about 30 feet ahead of the bus stop, an elderly man had collapsed. He was wearing a Vietnam veteran cap, and no one around him seemed to be stopping to help. Marcus had a split second to make a decision. The Metro Transit rulebook was clear. Drivers were to maintain schedule and only stop at designated bus stops unless there was an emergency directly involving the bus. Technically, this situation didn't qualify. He was already running 2 minutes behind due to heavy traffic earlier on his route. But Marcus wasn't thinking about rulebooks in that moment. "I just saw someone who needed help," he would later explain. "I wasn't thinking about company policy or my schedule. I was thinking that could be my father lying there." Marcus pulled the bus over immediately, secured the vehicle, and announced to his passengers that there would be a brief delay. Most of the 15 passengers on board were absorbed in their phones, but a few looked up with mild annoyance that quickly turned to concern when they realized what was happening. "I need to help that man," Marcus told them. "I'll be right back." He rushed to where the elderly man was lying on the sidewalk. Up close, Marcus could see that he was in his early 70s, sweating profusely and struggling to breathe. The veteran's cap had fallen off, revealing gray hair and a face twisted in pain. "Sir, can you hear me?" Marcus asked, kneeling beside him. "I'm going to help you." The man's name was Richard Winters, a 73-year-old Vietnam veteran who had been walking to his weekly VA appointment when he suddenly felt lightheaded and collapsed. He was conscious but disoriented, clutching at his chest. Drawing on the first aid training that Metro Transit required all its drivers to complete, Marcus quickly assessed the situation. Richard was conscious but showing signs of what could be a heart attack. Marcus called 911 immediately, providing the dispatcher with their location and Richard's symptoms. "Stay with me, sir," Marcus kept saying as they waited for the ambulance. "Help is coming, just keep breathing." By this time, a few passengers had gotten off the bus to see what was happening. One of them, a nursing student named Sarah, came over to help Marcus. Together, they kept Richard comfortable, loosening his collar and talking to him to keep him alert until paramedics arrived. It took 7 minutes for the ambulance to get there, 7 critical minutes during which Marcus's bus remained parked, his schedule completely derailed. But in those 7 minutes, Marcus and Sarah had potentially saved Richard's life by recognizing the signs of cardiac distress and providing immediate assistance. As the paramedics loaded Richard into the ambulance, the veteran weakly grasped Marcus's hand. "Thank you, son," he said. "Not many would have stopped." Marcus simply nodded, wished him well, and returned to his bus. The passengers who had witnessed the event applauded as he climbed back into the driver's seat. Even those who had initially seemed annoyed by the delay now wore expressions of respect. "Sorry for the delay, folks," Marcus announced. "We'll be on our way now." The bus was now 12 minutes behind schedule. Metro Transit's policy stated that any delay exceeding 5 minutes needed to be reported immediately to dispatch. Marcus radioed in, explaining the situation briefly. The dispatcher acknowledged and told him to continue on his route. By the end of his shift, Marcus had mostly forgotten about the incident. It had been the right thing to do, and he didn't expect any recognition or repercussions. He clocked out at 4:30 p.m. and headed home to his wife and two teenage daughters. The next morning, however, Marcus was called into his supervisor's office as soon as he arrived for work. "Marcus, we need to talk about what happened yesterday," said James Peterson, the operations manager. Peterson was known for being a stickler for rules and procedures. Marcus was confused at first, but it quickly became clear that he was in trouble. According to Peterson, Marcus had violated company policy by stopping at a non-designated location for a non-transit emergency. "The rulebook is clear," Peterson explained, sliding the Metro Transit Operations Manual across the desk. "Drivers are to maintain schedule and stop only at designated stops. Emergencies are defined as situations directly involving the bus or its passengers." "But someone needed help," Marcus protested. "He could have died." "That's what emergency services are for," Peterson countered. "Your job was to stay on schedule for the other passengers who were counting on you. What if one of them missed an important appointment because of your delay?" Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So I was supposed to just drive past someone who might be having a heart attack?" "You were supposed to follow protocol," Peterson said firmly. "You could have called it in without disrupting your route." Before Marcus could argue further, Peterson handed him a letter. It was an official notice of suspension, 2 weeks without pay, effective immediately. The reason cited was willful disregard for company procedures resulting in significant service disruption. For Marcus, this was devastating news. 2 weeks without pay would make it difficult to cover his mortgage payment. His older daughter was in her first year of college, and tuition was already stretching the family's finances thin. "I need this job," Marcus said quietly. "Then I suggest you follow the rules in the future," Peterson replied. "You can appeal this decision if you want, but the policy violation is clear." Shocked and angry, Marcus left the office. As he walked out of the transit center, he couldn't help but wonder if he was being punished for doing what any decent human being would do. Word of Marcus's suspension spread quickly among his fellow drivers. Many were outraged. By that afternoon, several had reached out to local news stations with the story. The headline practically wrote itself: "Bus driver suspended for saving veteran's life." The first news story aired that evening on Channel 5 News. The reporter had done their homework, interviewing passengers who had witnessed the incident. Sarah, the nursing student who had helped at the scene, was particularly vocal. "What happened that morning was nothing short of heroic," she told the camera. "The man was displaying clear signs of cardiac distress. If Marcus hadn't stopped when he did, we might be talking about a very different outcome." The reporter had also tracked down Richard Winters, who was recovering at the VA Medical Center. Doctors had confirmed that Richard had indeed suffered a minor heart attack, and that the prompt response had likely prevented a more serious event. "That young man saved my life," Richard said from his hospital bed. "I got dizzy and went down hard. Nobody else was stopping to help. If that bus driver hadn't come over when he did, well, I might not be talking to you right now." The public reaction was immediate and intense. By the next morning, Metro Transit's social media accounts were flooded with comments criticizing the decision to suspend Marcus. "Stand with Marcus" started trending locally. The transit authorities' phone lines were jammed with calls from angry citizens. But the real game-changer came when Richard's son, Major David Winters, got involved. David was stationed at Fort Bragg but flew home immediately upon hearing about his father's heart attack. When he learned about Marcus's suspension, he was incredulous. "My father served this country for 20 years, he told reporters. "He put his life on the line in Vietnam, and when he needed help, this bus driver stepped up without hesitation. And this is how we thank him, by taking away his livelihood." Major Winters didn't stop there. He contacted his commanding officer, Brigadier General Thomas Harrison, who had served with Richard in Vietnam. General Harrison was now a respected figure in military circles with connections that reached into the highest levels of state government. The general made one phone call to the governor's office. Meanwhile, Marcus was at home, worried about how his family would manage without his income for 2 weeks. His wife, Elena, a part-time teacher's aide, was supportive but concerned. "You did the right thing," she assured him. "We'll figure out the money somehow." His teenage daughters were equally supportive, though his youngest was confused. "Dad, I don't understand," she said at dinner that night. "They teach us at school to help people in trouble. Why would you get in trouble for that?" Marcus didn't have a good answer for her. Then came the knock on the door. When Marcus opened it, he found himself face to face with Major David Winters in full uniform, along with a news crew and several Metro Transit officials, including the company's CEO, Catherine Reynolds. "Mr. Johnson," Major Winters said, extending his hand. "I'm David Winters, Richard's son. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did for my father." Stunned, Marcus shook his hand. Reynolds stepped forward next. Her expression was a mix of embarrassment and contrition. "Mr. Johnson, on behalf of Metro Transit, I want to apologize for the way this situation was handled. Your suspension has been lifted, effective immediately." As cameras rolled, Reynolds explained that after reviewing the circumstances and the overwhelming public response, the company had decided to not only reinstate Marcus, but to award him the transit authority's highest commendation for exemplary service. "Furthermore," she added, "we will be reviewing our policies regarding emergency situations to ensure our drivers have the discretion to respond appropriately when human life is at stake." Major Winters then spoke again. "My father is going to make a full recovery, thanks to you. The doctors said that without immediate attention, things could have been much worse. You didn't just follow rules that day, you followed your moral compass. And for that, our family will be eternally grateful." The news coverage of this reversal spread even faster than the original story. Metro Transit, which had initially faced intense criticism, was now being cautiously praised for acknowledging their mistake and taking steps to change their policy. But the story didn't end there. The following week, once Richard was released from the hospital, a special ceremony was held at the Metro Transit headquarters. Marcus was officially presented with the commendation, with Richard Winters and his family in attendance. But the biggest surprise came when Brigadier General Harrison himself appeared on a video call. "Marcus Johnson," the general began, his voice commanding even through the screen, "I understand you were willing to risk your job to help one of our veterans. That kind of moral courage reflects the very values our soldiers fight to protect. On behalf of the United States Army, I salute you." The room erupted in applause. Marcus, never one to seek the spotlight, felt both honored and slightly overwhelmed by all the attention. After the ceremony, Richard approached Marcus quietly. "You know," the veteran said, "in Vietnam we had a saying, 'Leave no man behind.' It wasn't just a military strategy, it was a promise we made to each other. You kept that promise even though you never served. You didn't leave me behind." For Marcus, that meant more than any official commendation. In the months that followed, several significant changes took place. Metro Transit revised its policy manual to explicitly state that drivers were authorized to stop in emergency situations where human life appeared to be at risk. They also implemented enhanced first aid training for all drivers. James Peterson, the operations manager who had suspended Marcus, was reassigned to a different department. While the company never publicly admitted it, many believed this was a direct result of his handling of the situation. Marcus returned to his route, where he was now something of a local celebrity. Passengers would often thank him or try to take selfies with him. He handled the attention with characteristic humility. "I'm just doing my job," he would say, "and part of that job is being human." The story might have faded from public attention after that, but 6 months later, Marcus received an invitation that would take it to a national level. The American Public Transportation Association wanted to present him with their annual Heroism Award at their conference in Washington, D.C. At the conference, Marcus found himself sharing a stage with transit workers from across the country who had performed extraordinary acts of service. When it was his turn to speak after receiving his award, he kept his remarks brief but meaningful. "I didn't do anything special that day," he told the audience. "I just saw someone in need and stopped to help. We all face moments like that, moments where we have to choose between what's convenient and what's right. I hope that if any good comes from this story, it's that more of us choose what's right, even when it's not in the rulebook." His words resonated beyond the conference hall. Video of his speech was shared widely online, sparking discussions about workplace policies, moral obligations, and the sometimes conflicting demands of efficiency and humanity in our modern world. Richard Winters and Marcus Johnson remained in touch. Richard made a full recovery, and often joined Marcus for coffee before his VA appointments. The veteran introduced the bus driver to other members of his VFW post, where Marcus was now considered an honorary member. Perhaps the most lasting impact of the story came a year later, when the state legislature passed what became known as the Marcus Johnson Act, a law that provided legal protection for public employees who departed from standard procedures when responding to medical emergencies. As for Marcus himself, he continued driving his route with the same dedication as before. He didn't consider himself a hero or an activist, just someone who made the choice he knew was right. At the end of the day, he often reflected, schedules and rulebooks are important, but nothing is more important than a human life. Sometimes you have to trust your heart over your handbook. His story serves as a powerful reminder that in a world often driven by protocols and procedures, there remains an unwritten code that transcends all others: to reach out a helping hand when someone is in need, regardless of the consequences. It's a simple truth that Marcus Johnson understood instinctively on that ordinary Tuesday morning when he saw a veteran collapse on his route, a truth that no company policy could ever override. That sometimes, the most important stops in life are the ones that aren't on the schedule. If you found this story inspiring, hit that subscribe button and check out my next video about first responders who went above and beyond the call of duty. Thanks for watching.